All right. Well, good morning. Wow. Look at all the overachievers, 7 a.m. on a Saturday. As one of the farmers that puts the show together, I do appreciate those of you that maximize your opportunities while you're here, and we've got a great session here today. So this session was selected by a team of farmers from the American Soybean Association, corn growers, the National Association of Wheat Growers, the sorghum producers, and AEM. We thank Total Acre for producing this session for us today. It has been approved for CEU credits, so if you need those, be sure to sign up in the back or scan the QR code on the sign. We'd also appreciate it if you filled out the evaluation form at the end. It'll let us know how we're doing in selecting these and make sure we have a great selection for next year as well. With no further ado, I'll turn it over to these two fine gentlemen to kick off this session.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, y'all. You know, here it is, 7 o'clock. Appreciate y'all being here. I know this is the last day. Don't forget, we changed the clocks tonight, so don't miss an airplane, all right?
Be on time for church, right?
That's right. Do you ever wake up? I mean, I get a good friend of mine sends me a daily devotional every morning. And, you know, do you ever, I mean, I'm sure most of y'all read a daily devotional, but does it ever, like, hit you like there's a devotional about the day that you're getting ready to have, and it's like it's meant to be? Well, a friend of mine, Sam Howard, sends this to me every day, and the verse from Proverbs 22:3, a prudent man foresees the difficulties ahead and prepares for them. A simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Now, how fitting to talk about planning today to get that. Do you think that's meant to be? So, if I always get nervous in front of you, would think I wouldn't. So, if we could just bow our heads to help me calm down and prepare us today. Dear Lord, just thank you for this chance to come together. It's just a humbling opportunity for us to just convene in a ability to become better stewards of the resources you've given us, dear Lord. You've blessed many of us in the past season. You've challenged a lot of us, dear Lord, and we've had some lost loved ones in the time. Just look over each and every one of us. Bless us in the upcoming season. Please be with their family and co-workers as they're away from them. Give us safe journey back home, and continue to lay your protecting hand on our armed forces. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Good morning. Glad to be here. Who's planted corn?
You mean this year?
Not who's going to plant corn, who has already planted corn for this year? What y'all waiting on? What's the problem? We have finished our contest corn. We finished it, I guess, Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wait a minute.
And we finished our contest beans on Thursday.
How do you know it's contest corn?
Well, the Total Acre guys, we had a little meet and greet at Chick-fil-A a couple days ago, and I asked that question again. They some of them knew the answer, or at least the question they asked me. So how do you guys know that you got contest corn? Pardon me?
How even it is when it comes up. How quickly.
Define even.
Window of time in which they all emerge.
What is acceptable?
You? 24 hours?
There is a certain level of GDUs between the first emerger and the last emerger that's acceptable. Who's bought inputs and threw a lot of dollars in vain away? And you say, well, Randy, how important is emergence? Well, Stephen Albrock probably planted the seed best many years ago when he would make claims that he would have his crop come up in 8 hours. And I would say, 8 hours? Come on. Every plant, 8 hours? I said, how you know, Stephen? Because I was out there, Randy. I said, okay, well, I'll take you for your word. But your vision, y'all getting old, Stephen. Can you see very well? And define emergence. How do y'all define emergence? When you can look down the row and actually see corn coming up? How tall? He's going like this, 1/4 inch. Define emerged. When that little bitty needle, that spike, breaks the soil surface, and it looks like a grain of sand. It's white. That's emergence. If you can't see it, get on your hands and knees. If your vision sucks, this ain't your job, okay? Find somebody with better eyes and better knees and get on your hands and knees and find it when it's at the soil surface. And you have to do that. And it's every plant. So we came up with the flag test many years ago. And I wanted to understand what Stephen meant by 8 hours. But more importantly, 8 hours this year might be different than 8 hours 2 years ago or 8 hours next year, right? We all accumulate heat differently. So what really matters is how many GDU separation between the first emerger and last emerger. And if they all come up within a certain window, and we teach that with Total Acre, they come up with a certain window, that no longer is your limiting factor. You've checked that box, you move on to something else, okay? You've done a good job with the planter. The seed company did a good job by giving you seed that were uniform in some capacity that they could emerge and do well. Now,
You assume so.
no, they came up, David. They came up uniform. So at that point, they've at least done their part. Now,
Sure.
before you put it in the ground, you assume that they provided you quality seed. How do y'all know that it's quality without checking it? It comes up, wrong answer. That just means they didn't lie to you about germ. Period. That means they didn't lie to you. They didn't lie to you about it having the ability to come up. Most people measure, I planted 35,000, I got 33,000 of them up. That means they didn't lie to you. Did they all come up simultaneously within a certain GDU window? So that's my challenge to you this year. If you don't do anything else trial-wise, go out there, do the flag test. And the flag test consists of this, and we'll do it as fast as I know how to do it.
Well, first and foremost, in order to do the flag test, you got to have flags. And what better way to do something is get some free flags. And if you want to stimulate your neighbors to get them to talk about you, put a bunch of flags out there, and they think you're going to develop the property.
Or it's for sale, some survey flags, right?
That's right, survey's coming. So if y'all haven't been by the Precision Planting booth, go by there because they have a emergence flagging kit, and you can sign up for that, and they'll send it to you. So just get something for nothing for a change.
Well, their stuff's cheap anyhow, David.
Yeah, I know.
So,
And that's probably one thing they're not out of.
yeah,
Flags.
There you go. Did you just say that out loud? But anyhow, the principle of the flag test is this. If you plant 35,000 plants, you take 35 flags with you because you're going to go out and measure 1/1000th of an acre, okay? So if you're on 30-inch rows, that's 17.5 feet, correct? It may vary for 20s or 22s or 15s or 36-inch, whatever you're on. Understand what 1/1000th of an acre is for you. You then go out in the field, you take it, you're going to be optimistic that you have set the planter correctly and everything is going to come up simultaneously and the seed company's done their job, and et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to be optimistic and you're going to just go with a red flag to start off with. You take 35 of them out there and you pick one row. Make sure it's not on the end rows. Get off the headlands. Get out there in some part of the field and just pick a row. And when you pick that row, you go out there and you're very optimistic, but you got to be there before the corn comes up. So ideally, you were there the afternoon or the morning before, and you're there and you scratch and you say, you know what, this is the soil surface. Corn's not up. My vision is good. I can't find any. And you're here once they do start to come up. A 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch or less, like a ballpoint pen. That little ballpoint pen tip is when you want to be there, okay? So we take and we look at the soil surface and we place a flag at every plant that's up. So if you got 30,000 plants, you know it's roughly 5 to 6 inches depending on how far your spacing is. You're now marking plants. You mark off the whole 17.5 feet if you're on 30-inch rows. You then come out here and you mark each plant that's up. Here's one flag. Here's one flag. Well, that's a foot apart. Where's this one? Don't scratch. Let him come up on his own. Okay? You do this the whole 17.5 feet with a flag, and you mark every plant that's up. You then take a piece of paper and you write it down. I had 17 plants that were up. Now you're gonna be back 12 hours later. Now this job is not for the guy running the planter, because he ain't gonna get off of it 12 hours later and go mark flags. This needs to be a wife. It needs to be a child and an adult that works together, because kids will find these little suckers and make it a game. Teach them the way they shall go, and they will not depart from it, right? Incorporate grandkids for those grandparents out there. It's a great job, good thing to do. And then you do this, and you come back 12 hours later, now you got a blue flag. You mark every plant that's up, write it down. Red flags for first emergers are 17. Blue flags to second emergers are 5. You do this every 12 hours until all the plants that you planted are up. You keep this piece of paper, put it in the visor. You come back at harvest. You got 5 different flag colors, you bring 5 buckets. You take all the red flag ears and put them in a bucket, all the blues, all the whites, put them in a bucket. Then you get to play another game with your kids, and you get to break out those old-time corn shellers, right? Or you can do it by hand, or you got a little electric one, however you want to do it. You're going to shell the grain by flag, okay? You're going to weigh them. You're going to do some math. You're going to see what the yield was on the first emergers versus the yield on the second emergers versus the third emergers versus the fourth emergers. If you're smart, you notate GDUs that the plant has accumulated on that first one. Then you do some math of how many GDUs was separated between the first flag and the second flag, and then the third flag and the fourth flag. You will find a window that you can live with based off your level of acceptance. How many GDU separation do I really want between the first emerger and the last emerger? You will then figure out at the end of the year, do you think that 17.5 feet, any variation in yield was due to the fact that it rained more on some of those plants than it did the other ones? Will you think that maybe some of those plants had more fertilizer than the other rows, the other plants in the row? 6 inches apart. Maybe, but how do you fix it, right? When we make high yields, we blame what? We give credit to what? The weather worked out pretty good for us. When we make bad yields, what do we blame? The weather. What you're going to find, that this don't have nothing to do with the weather. We're taking away an excuse. You're going to find that what? Maybe the guy setting the planter and running it needs some help. Okay? You will also discover how many GDUs separation you can live with. Because every time you make an application going forward that costs you $25 to $30 an acre, David, you want 70% of your plants to respond to that, or you want 100? If you got 70% that comes up at the same time and you're spending $25 an acre, do you want all the plants to respond to that treatment, or you want one of them? Or 100% of them? What do y'all want? I can't hear you. So to get that, they got to come up at the same time. Now how do you make them get up at the same time? Okay?
So when you think about that, and here we are talking about how we use information trials to prepare for the next growing season, that's one of the components. Why are you going to try or vet a product where you don't have as good a stand? And then, you know, one of the guys in Total Acre, elderly gentleman, he realized he couldn't do the flagging trial because if he went down, he probably couldn't get back up. So he hired a high school kid to do every one of his cornfields. He paid him $100 a field.
For a completed test.
For the end results of it. And that was the best money he says he spent, because now he knows where to push his corn or where it's just production corn like he's been doing all along. He already knows how to do that. And it goes to what Dowdy was talking about. When you want to influence your crop, it's best to influence the crop that has the most uniform stand. So if you're going to try one of the fairy dusts that are downstairs, or some of the chemicals, crop protection, or any of the nutrients, biologicals, do those type of trials on areas where you have good uniform emergence. And then to take it to the next step, do the whole planter. Click through a couple slides.
Now you got to do the whole planter.
Yeah.
You just tested one row, okay?
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about
Well, we're
different
just going to
things.
get to it right now because we're
Okay.
talking about
Y'all
it.
know who Randy and David is,
Yeah,
so
that's
really no
right.
presentation there.
One of the things on this particular slide here is, you know, oftentimes, well, first and foremost, to try something new, isn't it cheaper for somebody else to try it and tell you if it worked? as opposed to you trying it. I mean, I remember trying different hybrids, and my granddad would say, boy, you're better off throwing that corn in the woods and go buy you some Pioneer seed. Did you get that?
Y'all think, and David's got it to where you don't even have to buy it. They just give it to her.
So,
Between green paint comments and Pioneer seed, y'all a little suspicious about a little few things there?
well, we were other day with Marion Cameron. He said buck knife how many times?
That's right.
So, but one of the things that we also like to do now is the small trials. You know, you got these strip trials you can do, but if you have the ability and you're working with a university group or a researcher, and they're or in an area, give them some products and let them do something. Because you remember when you first got new corn hybrids? You tried it one year, you put it on a few more acres the next year, the third year you really went all out. Well, the corn hybrid's about gone then. But a lot of these protections and nutritional products, they're going to be around for a while. We might be tweaking them. So try it on a small scale, then go on up to the larger scale. But I really wanted to get to this slide because Randy and I were with a grower, brand new. It was a red planter, I believe. Irregardless what kind of brand planter it was. He did this same trial Randy's talking about, but he did it on every row. And then also, at the end of the season, outside of whether doing the trial, hand shell or collect 1/1000th of an acre for every row.
So do the flag test first on every row, and it's going to take a little bit of time to do it. But now you'll figure out if one row made 290 bushel corn or 300 bushel corn, if this row is the highest yielder, or this one's the highest yielder, or this one's the highest yielder, is that the weather's fault? I can't hear you. We don't like to look and think we the problem sometimes, but sometimes we the problem. Sometimes it's mechanical, sometimes it's just operator error. Ignorance is bliss, do y'all agree? A farmer does not worry about what he don't know. Do you agree? But when he starts getting some data and he starts understanding, is a picture worth 1,000 words? Is a picture worth 1,000 words? You got to have some data. This is a great way for you to understand that there are some free bushels out there you're leaving on the table. Free bushels. Who likes free stuff? David does. So there's no question, if you want to improve ROI and give yourself the best chance, we got to figure out where free bushels come from. And you got to have data to do that.
When you say data is important, we were hosting a clinic in Arizona the first year, and a fellow named Mr. Troy from Precision Planting, he asked the audience, he said, what is the most important component that we have to offer? And what should you gravitate towards first on precision planting technology? And you know, there were people that were saying, well, I want Delta Force, I want the V-set or E-set, closing system, furrow jet, you know, they had a whole list. He said, no, the first piece of equipment you should put in there is your 20/20 monitor. Why? To collect the data that he's referring to. It's not telling you emergence, but the only way we're going to make improvements is understand where we're having their shortfalls. Dowdy oftentimes talk about the law of the minimum. So finding out what your limiting factor is, and if it is a planter, clearly you see we're talking about the planter right now because we know the value of that, and that's extremely important. To get that crop up uniformly, now you can move forward. And then Dowdy saw, I'll let him continue on this, things that he saw outside the high yielding spot.
So I came up with the planter variability test. Me and David walked in fields, and our initial deal was that me and David walked through the field, and how many rows we'd walk through, and you got a row on either side of you, and we'd ask our growers, how many rows, you know, if you got a row here and a row here, how many of the ears out of 10 ears were on the same node? And we'd get a score, 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 6 out of 10. They all should be on the same node. You should be able to pull a string from one end of the field to the other end of the field, and them all be on the same node if they come up at the same time. Who's got that? That was a question. Who's got that? I didn't see any hands come up. Who's got that? If you don't, you got something that you can correct that helps get free bushels, okay? Helps make all the dollars you spend going forward give you more of a chance to make return on investment. And who's my first generation or new generation coming to the farm that struggles with Daddy's way of, we've always done it this way? Raise your hand high. Is Daddy here with you? Because I work with him. I'm a guy to go down there and talk, okay, Daddy, what's the problem? Why are we having this struggle? You start putting some stuff like this on the concrete in the shop. What's this, son? Daddy, this is how our planter performs. Maybe you need help getting some upgrades to make it perform better. Maybe you need to get the seed company to do a better job. Maybe there's one of those 9 things we teach in Total Acre that's controllable, right? That you can do to fix it. So join a program, hopefully ours, and we'll teach you these things. We spend a lot of time on trying to help you maximize those free bushels, okay? But that picture's worth, in that scenario, a lot of money. We have seen guys make 330 bushel corn. Their field average was 220. They'll have some 130 bushel rows, and they got some 330 bushel rows. Is that a Malox moment? That's a Malox moment. You left yield on the table, okay?
Well, it takes the weather out of the equation, because what row is going to get more weather than the next row?
Right.
And then, like Randy said, if one generation is doing the other, find out which one's doing the planting and spend a little bit more time. The problem with some of y'all want to get all your corn planted in 7 to 10 days. Well, a lot of times the corn's not up yet, so you better have things done right. And then if you're like, well, Dowdy planted all his corn in like a day and a half.
So to answer the question, David asked me in the beginning, to answer the question that David said, he said, how do you know it's your best corn? How do I know it's my best corn? How do I know it's contest corn? Based off this conversation, how do I know that? It's not up. It's just all the monocrop corn I'm going to plant. It's got to be a contest if I'm going to have one, right?
That's right.
So there's a little bit of a trick there, right?
Yeah.
Everybody would ask, well, how do you know, Randy, it's not up? You don't know if it's your contest corn, because I tell my growers all the time, where I'm going to push yield is where I've done a flag test, and I know that the corn came up in a certain GDU window, not hours, not 24 hours, not 12, not 8. An acceptable GDU window based off history that has proven that that's not my yield limiting factor. Maybe something else, but it ain't emergence, okay? But in this instance, I'm only planting a certain amount of acres in monocrop. So if I'm gonna have a contest field, it's got to be there, right? We'll see based off emergence. Now we planted in the 75-degree soil temperature. It's planted. We got a little bit of rain yesterday. We've irrigated to ensure that no dry dirt came from the top of the crust while we were planting that may have fell around the seed. We've ensured that moisture was, homogenized, that, we made sure that was not our limiting factor, and we also wanted to incorporate herbicides. So we put water on it, and hopefully by Tuesday it's up. Who would be excited about having corn up in 5 to 7 days? Not in Michigan. I understand. You plant it late enough, it'll come up that fast, but you might not make it to the end, right? Yep. I get it. So, David, I'll let you talk about this slide here.
Well, y'all, one of the things Randy and I had talked about, we wanted to get an opportunity just to get in front of y'all, because how many times do you go and you hear some presenters talk, and then by the time it's time to ask questions, they only got like 5 minutes, right? So
is there a session after this one?
I don't know. So
in this room?
So we wanted to be sure to give y'all plenty of time to ask questions. So
we'll go as long until they run us out of here.
Well,
that fair?
in case they do,
somebody hold the door shut, and we'll keep going. So I had it one year, and they got on to me pretty hard about going over. So
yeah. So we're just going to buzz through a couple of these slides. I want it to be y'all.
Yep.
Now, this particular, one of the things that we do is with the Total Acre Group is we get guys to record data, to collect tissue samples, to do trials, to do side-by-sides. Last year was what? High input pricing. And the one thing, or several things growers try to determine is, all right, I'm going to grow a crop. I'm either going to spend some money on it or I'm going to try to save my way to prosperity. The only thing we know that we can do that's going to give us bushels is things where we know pay. And for a grower, it's hard to make an application and then all of a sudden leave a control out there where you don't make that application. But yet if you don't do that, then you don't know it pays. So as a grower, if this one particular product gave you 10 bushels consistently, then when things are tight, you're going to do that. So this is just showing a side-by-side where the right sides.
If I remember this correctly, I was there, and I believe it was Minnesota. We're tapping in some old brain cells here.
Yeah.
David. And I believe Randy was actually at the meeting with me, and he took this picture. And the poor man, the farmer's agronomist, got fired after this year. The guy on the field on the left, can y'all see a difference there at all? He told him because of his planting date and all the things that had happened in that particular year, if I'm correct, he told him point blank, don't spend no money. It's going to cost you a bunch of money because of things that had happened in that particular season. And when I went there and I saw the corn, that's one cool thing about it. Who would like to see David Hula walk in their field and tell them what's right and what's wrong? We do that twice a year all over this country. We go through with farmers. That's part of what you get with Total Acre. You get meetings 2 in the fall, 1 in December, a big planter type clinic or a grower clinic in Phoenix the last 2 or 3 years. But we also go in the summer and we actually talk to growers in their fields. And we actually look at, hey, in my opinion, you don't need to spend any more money. Some people need to know when to stop spending money. Do y'all agree? Sometimes you need to be encouraged to spend some money. In this scenario, I said, you've checked a lot of boxes. You need to go do A, B, and C ASAP. Really? I said, absolutely. Don't give up on this crop. This is what you need to go do. This is what it looked like after he did it. There was like 60 bushels difference, following his agronomist's lead on the left, following my lead on the right. Maylocks moment, right? So we go there, we do our best to coach you in things that you might want to do. I've had to look some guys in the eye. Dave Schrock, I see you in the room. You've heard me in the past tell some people don't spend no more money. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Do y'all agree? You can't throw so much money after things, right? There's been times I've had to tell people that, and that's not a fun and awkward situation. I'm the good cop in Total Acre, and David's the bad cop.
Hence the shirt color.
And the bottom line is our styles are different. Some people don't like me, and I'm sorry. I try my best to have the best bedside manner I can, but after I talk about something with conviction, and I ain't guessing on your farm, Paul Bodenstein put it best. I'm bold in my facts, and I'm humble in my opinions. You'll know the difference. Some of you need me to tell you in a stern voice. Sometimes when you go to church, you want the preacher to get your attention. Do y'all agree? Some of you want to sit in the back of the church and don't ever want your toes stepped on. Do y'all agree? David's approach is, you've missed an opportunity. For the thin-skinned ones out there that are sensitive, he is received well. For the guys out there that need me to get their attention, Dave, I'll say, how many times we got to keep talking about this? What part of what I said didn't you understand? Am I speaking in southern accent here where we can't communicate? And I try to be nice about it. Man, please do what we ask. Because if we ask you to do it on those 2 fields, that's all we're asking for. Please do it. Because we ain't guessing, okay? We want to help you. And the sooner you get to that level, you'll agree with us, right? We've got another grower, Mike Jinks, and this is a picture of him at his farm. He had a shop that's probably twice this size. We show up there, and Mike Jinks in Iowa, he's a camp host there. Down this wall, down that wall, down this wall, plywood, like you see over here. Replicated 4 times. Every treatment that you can imagine Over 200 trials repeated 4 times with a control. It's him and his wife farming 1,200 acres. They put out over 11,700 flags. Don't tell me you don't have time. They can show you above ground what the plant looked like, and they can show you the biomass below ground. You can go visit this with Total Acre and see what they're doing. All these fairy dust products that are sold, he's got tissue samples with every one of them. Which ones move a needle, which ones didn't move a needle. Whether it's endless fur or whether it's foliar, et cetera, et cetera. We got some guys that do a pile of trials. They make me and David look silly. The cool part about Total Acre is you don't just learn from me and David, you learn from other growers. Okay? So everybody opens their book of knowledge, so to speak, and is willing to teach you.
So this is a great example on how we use trials to generate more field applications. It's, again, like Randy says, it's not just coming from him or myself, it's coming from the collective group. And then you get trials where Randy's done on his own farm right here.
And this is the trial that I did on my own farm many years ago. And this was starter. And this was when who remembers when I first started talking 2x2x2? 2x2 on both sides of the row. In this scenario, this had 25 gallons on one side. We took the same rate, same mix, same concoction, and put 12.5 gallons there and 12.5 gallons there. How many people now try to develop a way to make 2x2 applicators for a planter? Should I have trademarked that? How many people have made a bunch of money off of it? So I need everybody to go by Precision Planting's booth when you leave here. They've got an opportunity to do it with conceal, but we need a way to get it below the seed. So I need peer pressure, right? Peer pressure. We need a frame-mounted, non-row unit applicator, something that goes on the toolbar, to be able to apply fertilizer on both sides of the row so we don't have to overcome that and lift the planter and have to have excessive force, and it causes problems. We need a way to put fertilizer out on both sides of the row. Or go buy John Deere and tell them, we need a way to do fertilizer on both sides of the row. Every equipment manufacturer that's out there, we need a way to put 2x2 on both sides of the row and put it below the seed. If the seed's at 2 inches, we need fertilizer here and we need fertilizer there. Do roots grow on both sides of the plant? They're supposed to, right? They're supposed to. And if they do, you need to stimulate both sides, okay? So this was a trial. We still lack in the industry a way to get it below the seed. Your mobile nutrients like nitrogen and some of your micronutrients will move with rainfall, but you're contingent upon what? Irrigation or water from above. Now we get a huge benefit from the phosphorus. How well does it move? How well does it move based off Marion Commerce data? Potash too, right? We need a way to get it below the seed. Now for all you guys that get brace roots, you might get it eventually, but brace roots is not a good sign for high yields, okay? These are some trials where guys are doing intercropping. I'm pretty sure this is Gene Cash's farm out of Kentucky, and he's got a 6-row head, he's got beans, he's got corn. In this scenario, he's farming sunlight. You want to make bushels, you farm sunlight. You create as many edge effect rows as you can across that field, period. He did it with the equipment he's got. He's creative. We got a whole intercropping group that's within Total Acre. Everybody shares information, what they've done. East-west rows, north-south rows, fixed ear hybrids, non-semi-flex hybrids, tall hybrids, short hybrids. Sky's the limit. Populations varying from different plants, et cetera. Okay? Different rows assigned. That particular field, he had a 780 with a 6-row head on it. All non-irrigated. Is that a little overkill? Overkill? Go ahead, David. How's your chance to say? Well, it ain't for a John Deere. Right? Is it overkill? Most people going to put a 12-row or 16-row head on it? Dryland corn, 360, 380 bushel corn. Dryland, non-irrigated. We did the planter variability tests out there. We had farmers from North Dakota, all over the country that came from all over to see this field. He had 1,800 acres of it. He didn't put his big toe in the water. He did 1,800 acres. You think he's sold out? He's convinced. Now he's even double cropping behind his wheat harvest with wheat and beans, or with corn and beans. Double cropping behind it with intercrop. We got a lot of people that you can learn from that's in Total Acre, not just Randy and David, okay? The outside rows was cutting 450 bushels. When you harvested one row at the time, or you hand harvested it, over 450 bushels on the outside row. That impressive? That's impressive. Okay? With this, you also get access to our software. We're going to go really fast now, just simply. If you were to apply, how many people have applied micronutrients in the past? They pull a tissue sample, they see you got a problem, and you apply micronutrients. Anybody do that? How do you buy your micronutrients? You pull a tissue sample, you realize you got a problem, you go to the co-op, they sell 4 products. Which ones do you buy? Cheapest. Is that the way it works? I can't hear you. Is that normally how it works? You buy the one that the salesman convinces you is the one you need. Most of the time, you're going to push back, well, this one's a little bit cheaper. If they work, we're going to just use that one. In this scenario, we grayed out or blued out the actual products that were used because it's access to Total Acre members. But we got a 1-week move on what it did to the tissue sample and a 2-week, then an average. Would you have wanted to bought this product right here? Would you have wanted to buy that product? It had a negative response. If you buy a product, you want it to do what? Move the needle on the tissue sample. Do you agree? If you apply a product and it don't take and move the needle, what's the chances of it increasing yield? 0. Right? Ignorance is bliss. If you don't pull a tissue sample before you apply that product and you don't pull a tissue sample after you apply that product, you don't know if it moved the needle or not. Do you agree? You using the hope strategy. Is that a good one? It's a strategy, but it ain't a real good one. Right? How many farmers operate off the hope method? Don't
None
be bashful.
here.
It's amazing, David. They go to taking and looking at you and being responsive, and then when you start getting on their toes a little bit,
That's right.
somebody's texting me, right? Who wants to buy products that don't work? Who wants to buy products that do work? They are not created equal. The cool part about Total Acre is we got tens of thousands of tissue sample data, and then when the products were applied. We ain't guessing how they move a needle. It'd be nice if all the manufacturers put on there, on their label, hey, if you need a 10 part per million increase, you need to put a quart of our product out there, and it'll last for 2 weeks. Wouldn't that be nice if they did that? But instead, they say, for a moderate deficiency, apply X. For a severe deficiency, apply X. Now define moderate and severe. It's kind of like that 24 hours, right? It's kind of like that 24 hours. Do you agree? On how long it takes for a plant to come up? Really what matters is how many GDUs did it collect. That's what matters. So we're not guessing, we're trying our best, but the best thing is we got all these growers all around the country that's pulling tissue samples every week, and it's going into our database. We can tell you which products work based off the data. If that co-op sells one of those products up there, which one are you going to buy now? The one that the data is supporting, correct? Now you're making a better decision. Same thing here. When you pull a tissue sample, you send it off to a lab, you got an ordinal scale, it says it's sufficient. Sufficient for what yield? 100 bushel corn or 400 bushel corn? They don't know. Iowa State don't know, Illinois, Waypoint, Midwest Labs, all labs at your universities, et cetera, they don't know yield, period. They don't know what you applied. They don't know what you yielded. They don't know. So what we do is we take yields and associate it with tissue sample values at certain GDUs in that plant's life. In this scenario, This was for a yield goal of 280. He's pretty green all the way across the board. Green means he's in good shape. Make sense? But when he raised his yield goal to 400, it's a bloodbath. Do you see it? If his yield goes 280, he don't need to spend more money. But he's got thoughts of grandeur and delusion. He better get some smelling salts and not keep spending the money. Okay? Here's David. David, do you remember that?
Yeah, we were in one of the Great Lake camps, and we had a root pit. You know, when you're evaluating products, how do we judge whether we had success or not? Typically, it's yield, right? And that how you say, well, this is something that worked or didn't work. Well, let's say you get a weather event, and then it blows over. You get a derecho, windstorm, named thunderstorm like a hurricane, hail event. Well, there are times that you made that application. You don't want to lose any yield. You do not want to lose any data, because all we're doing is preparing for next year. Where Dowdy was showing those slides of the tissue samples, y'all, every year is a trial to do better for next year. So don't lose or misplace any data. So here we're just trying to compare and see things that have happened. Where did the product influence the crop? Did it influence it on height? Did it influence on tissues? Did we get an influence on roots? Because seed companies know the portfolio very well above ground. If you walk around a trade show, there's a lot of talk and discussion about biologicals, right? Well, where is that happening? You know, there's a little bit going on the leaf, but most of it's in the soil. So we're just evaluating that, looking at roots, and that's one of the things that we have a tendency to do as we're going across the country. If I'm in the field, in your field, I'm gonna have a shovel, and I'm gonna be filthy dirty when we're done.
And a pocket knife.
And a pocket knife. Somebody's gonna bring a pocket knife, because usually TSA won't let me keep mine. So.
You just need to tell them you're King David. They don't understand that. Right?
Yeah, they'll put me in a different plane.
That's right. So we have a Phoenix event every year, not always just in Phoenix, but we bring all the growers together. We'll have 600 to 1,000 folks there. We bring them together. There's great camaraderie, great fellowship, guys learning from one another, but it's also a time that we learn from industry as well. We bring in outside vendors. We let them do their thing. We try to coach them in areas to educate. The good part about Total Acre is most of the growers are early adopters and innovators. So they had some vendors that was ill prepared, and we make them raise their game, okay? Now they talk about things in a different way, and we do our best. But we've got a lot of sponsors there. We do 2 days outside. You know, we split the group in half so that the groups are manageable, but you spend a full day outside and a full day inside listening to what the industry has to offer. And then the third day is when we go over our data reveal. All those slides I showed you a moment ago, what products move the needle, which products work, return on investment, when we have those opportunities to prove it, a lot of the trials that we're doing with the industry on farmer levels, et cetera, et cetera. But this is some of where we've had Missy Bauer there with her and her husband Bill, Precision Planting, a lot of good vendors there that come and are showing some intellectual property and making you think, okay? It's not just me and David. And then we'll be out there with them participating as well, okay? So we're gonna put this up so that if you're interested and you wanna learn more about it, we wanna open it up for questions. We got about, based off the clock, about 15 to 20 minutes for questions, but if they don't run me out of here, we'll keep going. So somebody fire us a question.
Got one right over here.
Somebody talk loud. There are microphones. They will try to bring it to you. There's somebody in the back. There's a microphone we can get. Mackenzie and Griffin is here. Mackenzie and Griffin, raise your hand so everybody can kind of see you. If you've got a question, go ahead and throw it up. They'll try to get to you with a microphone, or they can tell you the question and they will say it out loud. We got one over here, Mackenzie. Hold on. Go ahead.
Okay, I can talk loud. A friend of yours, Brian Hefty, talks about.
We got to define friends.
Are you defining my question?
No, we got to define friends. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
An acquaintance of yours, Brian
There you go.
Hefty, talks about planting corn starting at 40 degrees soil temperature. You're both laughing. Now, you talked about
Let me take this one.
I want it. Who wants me to answer that question or wants David to answer that question? Those that want David to answer, raise your hand.
Go ahead, Dowdy. I already know
Those
the
that want
answer.
Randy to answer the question, raise your hand. I want to hear hoorah. Come on. Who wants me to answer? All right. I don't want to fall off stage.
I know it's more like you want to be a moving target.
I don't miss, though.
I know you.
Got a lot of extensive training in my prior career. In my opinion, I know what happened. Was it 19, 20, David?
It's your story. Yeah, it was.
No. You see, he's politically correct, right? I get it. When was all the pre-plant year, or the prevent planting year? When was that?
19.
19. In 19, there was a major problem for the farmer, but also for the retailer. Problem is I know too much, right? And when seed don't get planted, it's an issue for the seed company. It's storage, it's recapturing that bag. Has it been damaged? Do you get to sell it later? What happened to the germ? Do you agree? Potentially, it could go down.
Yeah.
Then you got cold storage issues. You got handling issues. You got logistical issues. You got a lot of issues, right? It creates a nightmare, not just small companies that sell seed, but large companies as well. It's not a good thing, and most farmers it's not good for either because most of them's having to rely on what? Insurance to make a living, and that always is not the best way to make money. But what also does it get sold when you don't plant? What else does not get sold when you don't plant?
Well, crops for it, so you don't have
The crop don't get planted, but what else don't get sold? Chemicals, fertilizer, biologicals, amendments, you name it. Do y'all agree? Whose interest is it in that you plant that seed? No matter what. Whose interest is it in that you plant it no matter what? Whoever's selling the rest of that stuff, right? It's a good marketing scheme. You ask the question, I'm going to step through the door with both feet. Follow the money. Because at the end of the day, what kind of yield are you losing if that first drink of water is cold? What kind of money are you losing if that first drink of water is cold by that seed when it imbibes water that's cold? We got any PhDs in the room? We got any crop consultants in the room? Anybody?
They're not going to raise their hand.
Bottom line is there's some yield loss. Do you agree? Significant? Significant. You get paid back for that yield loss? And you keep buying fertilizer, you keep buying seed, or chemicals, you keep buying products. And they don't have a logistical issue. It's a marketing genius idea for them, not the farmer. I'm going to hush. Read between the lines. Follow the money. Don't drink that Kool-Aid. Don't drink that Kool-Aid. Be careful. They can say they picked the best vigor seed, and they can say they picked the best seed with the best saturated cold germ. They can say they did a lot of things to offset it. But what I tell you was the most important thing that need to happen? All the plants need to come up at the same time. Correct? Did I answer your question? Be very careful. Be very, very careful.
What's an ideal temperature?
56 degrees and a forecast that maintains it. If it's 50 degrees and you know that your weatherman's right, that there's a warming trend and that's going to happen, good luck with that weatherman being correct, right? Because every farmer out here is trying to plant when it's fit. Do y'all agree? That overrides everything. It's fit. I need to get it planted early. I need to get it done. I got X amount of acres to go across. We've got to start sometime. I got to get in the ground. I could have planted in December based off soil temperature. It's abnormally warm for us right now. I didn't wait to 75 degrees. Why did I wait to plant when I planted? When's Easter? April 9th. I don't want the growing point above ground. We got the risk of what? A full moon having a frost. If the growing point's above ground, how many heat units am I going to collect between March 6th and April 9th? Is there a real possibility, if I would have planted it earlier, that the growing point would have been above ground, we get a cold weather snap, it kills the crop. Now all double crop opportunities are done, and I got to replant. Yield just went out the window, and it cost me a bunch of money. That's my consideration. So what I'm asking you to do is, the plant don't do anything until it gets over 50 degrees anyhow. Now, at least, if you trust your weatherman, you need to collect, significant GDUs. Now, does your hybrid take 125 GDUs to come up, or does it take 75 GDUs to come up? Is that written on a label anywhere with Pioneer Seed? DeKalb? Now you need to know these things. Now you start to game it. Now you start to see, well, it's going to take 75 GDUs based off history for this hybrid to come up. The forecast says I can collect X amount of GDUs in the next 4 days. My first drink of water won't be cold. Now I go out there and I plant some corn because it's fit. Okay? There's got to be a method to your madness, and you got to understand the science behind it, but you got to have data to make those better decisions. Does this make good walking around sense, or does this snake oil? It's got to make sense, and that's the way we operate. Things just have to make sense to us. Okay? Next question. Yes, sir. Base saturation on corn. Oh, on potassium and magnesium. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about saturated cold germ. I was in that mindset. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good.
Base saturation on K. The easiest way for you to know where you need to be, does anybody have 330 bushel corn they ever see, or 300 bushel corn on their yield monitor? Anybody ever see 300 bushel corn? You pretty excited about that when you see it? Now pull a soil sample exactly in that spot. Stop the combine, pull a sample in that spot. Now look and see what's different in that spot of the field versus the spot everywhere else that you've been looking. If the base saturation is at 5 to 7% on K, where the highest yielding portions of the field are, and the base saturation is at 3 on the rest of the field, FBI would call that a clue. Make sense? You got the tools in your own backyard where you farm. Now you got to just get some data. The best thing David ever said a long time ago to all our growers, and me and David's been doing it for a long time, is you should have a soil probe and a soil probe bag in the combine with you when you harvest. So when you see a yield that you covet, get out, take some pictures, take some stalks, cut some off, split them in half, see what the nodes look like, see what the pith looks like, pull a soil sample. There's your clues. Make sense?
Well, and now depending on where you are is depending on what level it is. The more sand you got, the easier it is going to get higher. The heavier your soil, the harder it is. So sometimes you got to really open up your wallet. So if base sat is important to you, last year and this
it should
year,
be. We're going to give you a little clue. Base saturation is more important than parts per million or pounds.
Yep.
We got to understand where you are, okay?
If that's important to you, last year and this year are not a year to raise it because it's just stupid money. So prepare yourself, but like Dowdy said, and I was going to go that direction, stop the combine. Nobody wants to stop the combine. The only time you want to play with the joystick of the combine is when you want to take a picture of the yield monitor so you can send it to somebody. But stop the combine.
Is that what you've been doing when you send me them videos?
Yeah. You know, one of the worst days for me is when I'm with Total Acre Growers, and we're in July, first part of August. I'm in the middle of the field, and I see a text. Randy Dowdy. He's got a video, and he's picking corn. And then I don't even need to see the yield monitor. His plant is he should be chopping silage, y'all. The ear is dry, the stalk is green to 2 leaves below the ear, and I'm seeing all this foliage go in. This is probably the 5th phone I've had because I've thrown it in the street because I've seen his video. It's quite annoying.
David has his moments to get me, but I got plenty to get him before he harvests. No doubt about it. I'll mess with him.
But back to the question, because that's what y'all want to know. Base side is extremely important. Calcium, magnesium, potash, and then you start dealing with other ones, sodium and then hydrogen, and that's your acidity side. So find that high yield spot. Other times, find that low yielding spot, stop the tractor or combine, pull a sample. See now, you're starting to understand the madness on how we use trials to start improving our own operations. We do these things.
And now we got to the point we pull in 1 acre grids on every acre. 1 acre grids. It costs us $10 an acre. $10. $10 to find problems in the field and make them as uniform. It drives me nuts to drive across the field and have a lot of yield disparity, dropping significantly and raising significantly. When I was doing 2.5 acre grids, it's kind of like, and I told David to do it the very first time, and he'd been doing 2.5 forever, and I talked him into doing 1 acre, and he did it. And you know, the best analogy I can use, who's ever had an x-ray? Who's ever had an MRI? A little more invasive than going in that stupid tube, right? But when the doctor really wants to know what the problem is, they're going to do what? They're going to do an MRI. 1 acre grids is like the MRI. It shows you problems that you're not picking up on 2.5s or zones or 40 acre grids or 40 acre zone samples. We do 1 acre every year. That's our plan. Every year, that's what we do. Okay? Next question. Yes, sir.
Danny, I was in the meeting the other day, and y'all were there with,
Marion?
we got a lot of new information coming out. I'm in North Georgia.
Okay.
That area. We've been no-till for years and years and years. How in God's name can we get our nutrients down to all our seeds without somebody giving me a corn warrior, soil warrior? I can't afford to do that, things like that.
The question is, when he heard the presentation with Marion, there's a lot of stratification, and he's been a no-tiller for a long time. And Marion presented this data showing that there was just a lot of fertilizer staying in the top inch from where it was surface applied. It's not moving down in the profile. How do you get it lower? The way we get it lower, we do tillage. No-till's a great thing if you got 2 things happening. You got fertilizer in the root zone, and you don't have compaction. Now, do you have compaction? Because I've got guys in our group that's had 100, they've had 30, 40 years of no-till. Daddy's proud of it. He's out there in the field. Son's like, Daddy, we need to do something. Boy, this has been 30 years in this work. We're not doing this. I take Daddy and I put that soil penetrometer in his hand. I said, you got 2 dials here based off the tip here. Here's where you can go to. Above 300 pounds is impenetrable by a root. I want you to push down even, nice and smooth, and when you get to 300, I want you to stop. And grab the probe at the soil surface, and let's see how deep you went before you hit 300 foot-pounds. And most of the time, they get 2 to 3 inches. Do you want all your roots to grow in the top 2 to 3 inches? Can you sustain life and make a crop in the top 2 to 3 inches? So my thought process is no-till's great unless you got compaction and you got stratification. And that's taking a bunch of yield from you guys, so at some point you got to decide, is no-till worth it? At some point you got to decide, is no-till worth it? Now, do some deep ripping and then go back to no-till. Get rid of the compaction, see if that's the limiting factor. Turn some ground like he did with the moldboard plow. Take it and turn it over if you can. Not just 90 degrees, but turn it completely over. And some of you guys say, we ain't doing that. Buy you a deep shank ripper that lifts the ground and puts it right back down and places fertilizer deep right underneath the row. That's an option. David?
I'm about to jump out of my skin right now.
Go.
Wait for you to slow up.
Go.
The first and foremost thing, we've heard somebody mention something. Now, I'm anticipating we're all assuming we have that problem. Don't assume you got that problem. You first got to trust and check to verify you have that problem. Because I'm going to anticipate that where Marion was talking your phosphorus and your potash, I'm not sure what part of Georgia you're in, but y'all, I don't have all those problems that Marion talks about. I have nutrients in my profile. We have been running continuous no-till. Now, it's not the same on the top as it is in the bottom, but it's not nearly that V problem. And then if it is like some of these mobile nutrients, particularly potash, it moves slower on heavier soil, but it does move. My potash levels are not the same. I mean, they're higher, deeper down than they are on the top, because it does move. And when we get to clay, it slows down. So don't go assuming that you have as drastic a problem as Mr. Marion talked about. Prove that you have a problem, and then you can address it. Because I hate somebody, you mentioned a Soil Warrior. Soil Warrior is a great tool. It has a heck of a price tag on it. It is an implement. If used correctly, it'll work. I mean, what are the functions of it? Get some fertilizer in either shallow or you can go deeper. Understand where your problems are, y'all. You go around trade show, they're going to try to tell you have a problem with this. Go back home and confirm
Verify
that
it
that's your
first.
problem.
So I want to ask a couple of questions. Did anybody go to the awards banquet last night? Who competes in the contest? Anybody compete in the contest? Got a few? What's the rest of y'all do? Y'all don't compete in the contest at all? Or you just don't want to raise your hand? Who competes in the contest? Raise your hand. Is anybody not entering the contest because you got the same winners winning over and over and over again and you feel like you don't have a chance to win in your state? Me and David met with...
Well, before you ask that, how many of y'all look at the results of the contest? There you go. That's what you're really wanting to
So
get
me and David took and met with NCGA, and they asked for some suggestions that we could give. And one of my suggestions was make it where you win one time per class, period. Okay? One time per class, period. If there's two people that represent your farm, y'all got to decide who's going to represent the farm for that given year. Now everybody feels like we got a chance to win. Okay? Second thing I offered, I said, you know, who would like to see, who watches college football? Anybody like to watch college football? I said, I'd love to see a university division. They love to tell us what we do right and what we do wrong. Now let's see what they actually can do. They don't have to make yield to make a living, right? They don't have to do that. They get a paycheck either way. When's the last time something came meaningful from the university that affects your bottom line? And I'm not being critical, I'm being serious. Now, who would love to see the university actually enter the contest? Who would be real interested to get some popcorn and just say, all right, boys, this is going to be good. We get to see everything they got, right? I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Georgia win against Iowa State, right? Or the Ohio State. Bottom line is, they've got soil scientists on board. They got weed scientists on board. They got a bunch of agronomists, and they could also employ some of these students that's graduate. They got planters. They got ground. Who'd love to see that? Go by the NCGA booth. Anybody here from NCGA? They ain't gonna raise their hand for
You
nothing.
darn right they ain't right now.
We've been told it's going to take 2 or 3 different layers of approval to get something like this done. But who would like to see an industry class so that in case they watch this video, what's her name?
You had Miss Linda and Galen.
Miss Galen and Miss Linda is very receptive, but they got bosses. Raise a hand. Who would love to see a university division so we as farmers could see what they could do? Okay? Raise your hand. I think the majority wins. Who would like to see a seed division?
From an industry side.
Industry side. Raise your hand. It's overwhelming. Now we get to see what Pioneer brings to the table, DCAB, some of these small companies. They all got agronomists, right? You agree? Why would you not want to have it? Who'd like to see a nutritional division? All these people that selling all these products there, John Deere, with all their technology, precision planting. Let's see what they can actually do with their equipment. They got all these agronomists. They go to the winter clinic and conferences. They do all these trials with their dealers and all these things. or a nutritional company. Let's see how their products really work. They like to sell them to us, right? Get you a little bit bigger bag of popcorn, right? And when they don't win, it's going to put a little pressure on them to do what? Either make their products work better or learn how to farm. Do y'all agree? We need your help because we propose these ideas and they like, well, you think people would be interested in that? There ain't much doubt in my mind. Do you agree? We might get our 2x2x2. There you go. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to play chess when they play in checkers, right? Got a question? Yes, sir. What's that? Say it one more time. Y'all talk funny. I can't understand you. Sorry.
Yeah, he'd like to see what the yield of the refuge corn is if they were to take the refuge out. I'm assuming.
In Georgia, we don't have to plant refuge in a bag. You know why? Because our standard is 20%, not 5%. We in cotton country. We have to plant 20% of our acres in refuge, so it's pointless for us to do refuge in a bag. So they still plant. We still get the access of pure genetics without being commingled with other. So you say, well, that sounds great. Now start ordering some seed from the South. Cotton country.
Where any of the high yielding environments that growers are using, we would steer away from the refuge in the bag. Because we're talking about uniform emergence. Now we want all the plants to respond the same when you got two different hybrids. But you got to be cognizant. If you're going to plant some like YHR corn or some non-refuge in the bag corn, you still have to have that refuge. So be cognizant of that. Buy some refuge corn. That'll tell you what the yield is of some of it, but not always what they're mixing in the bag. But do not deviate from that, y'all, because we don't want to have a problem.
I got one more thing I want to say, and we'll keep asking questions. What's our number one enemy today? Input cost? Markets? Hard to do much with the markets. You can hedge your bets, and you can get people to help you that's smarter than me. I do a pretty good job of raising corn, but I suck at marketing. It's just the way it is. I make yield, but I'm emotional. If it's $4.70, I want $5, and I end up selling it for $4.20. Right? That's just the way it is. Anybody else can relate to that? That's just the way it is. So markets is hard to control. You can get some people that's smarter than you doing charts and hedges and calls and puts and all this garbage that I don't understand fully. It works for a lot of people. But the number one thing that I have found that's an enemy, especially the last 2 years, is prices. Do y'all agree? Randy has been putting out copious amounts of fertilizer for years, especially with chicken litter. And I've always used it for luxury feeding. And I've always said, you know, one day it's going to rain. It's kind of like a savings account, David. Mm-hmm. It's raining, boys. You don't like to, you save in a savings account, you save for a rainy day. Do y'all agree? It's raining. Fertilizer costs the way they are, it's pretty tough. Why are they so high? Because they can. Competition's limited. Paint don't have anything to sell you. They can get it from you because you got to have it, or you think you got to have it, right? Do y'all agree? But, and I'm not one to do this much, but I am very intrigued, and I can't wait to prove whether or not these boys can do what they say they can do. But there's two guys sitting on the front row up here. Raise your hand. We got Patrick, Justin, and they work heavily with C&C, Ag, and they're also known as Mutiny, but they also work heavily with Meristem. Meristem's model is we sell direct to the farmer. We cut out several levels of layers of what? Margin. These boys are selling direct to farmer. If you could save $100 a gallon on a jug of something, would that get your attention? You save $50 a gallon on something or $30 a gallon on something and cut out 3 or 4 retail locations margin, is that something that would get your attention? Is that something that would get your attention? You got me. He said, did you tell me not to buy the cheapest one? I'm telling you to buy the one that works, right? One thing that I know they have done, and I'm looking forward to it, the proof's in the pudding. I can't wait to look them in the eyeballs. Well, you told me X. But I'm going to vet it. Because on the end of the day, ROI is what it's about, making money, not about winning a contest. And they private labeled some products. They cut out several layers of distribution, and they've got the ability to sell to you at a price that retail is not competing with. That interests me, because in that, who's winning? Who's winning? The farmer. They got that figured out. The cool part is these boys farm, and they got access to major retail options. So you might want to consider it. They'll be at the Meristem booth over there. Meristem's portfolio, they direct the farmer. That's the way it is. Not trying to do a bunch of plugs, but I'm just trying to tell you it is something you may want to consider. Next question. Yes, sir. Absolutely. A tissue sample's 100% focus is to do what? Measure a component of yield, nutrition, see if it's yield limiting or not. We try to be consistent with when we pull those tissue samples, how we pull those tissue samples, the time of day, the day of the week. We get the results back. It's a component that we're measuring, right? If we make 350 bushel corn and we pull tissue samples every week, and at the end of the year, we made 350 bushel corn. Next year, we pull at the same GDU mark that we pulled those tissue samples last year. If the tissue samples are at the same value at 350, the next year, we understand at that point that's not our limiting factor for 350. Does that make sense? So if I pull every week, notate the GDUs, and I make 350 bushel corn, next year I'm going to pull at the same GDU mark in that plant's life. I'm going to compare the tissue sample values for that next year at that same point in that plant's life, and then I can rule out, is nutrients my limiting factor? Does that make sense? And that's what we've done with the software. Now you got it from everybody across the country that's doing it. It all goes into one database. Okay?
And we realize it's just a snapshot of what's happening at that particular time. You can pull it a day later or so many GDUs later, it's going to be a little different. Making sure we're focused on the correct leaf so we have continuity there. We send it to the same lab, so again, we have continuity there. And then, you know, you as a grower, you're looking at the data, you know your weather. If you just saw, unfortunately, it was shaded out, we have rainfall associated with that. So if based on rainfall where you are, whether it's irrigated or dry land, what kind of stress you're experiencing. And then again, GDUs. So how many GDUs, what stage are you compared to the calendar year? So if you got a lot more GDUs now, then clearly you are going faster. The crop's growing a little bit quicker. Typically, that may be induced because of stress, because your heat. So it's just a snapshot. It's a road map. So duplication is the key. When Randy and I, one of the first things we talked about was I congratulated him for his high yield success. I said, now duplicate it. Understand what you did. Do it again. And that's what we're talking about now.
Well, David, they giving us the sign in the back, and it ain't number one sign. They wanting us to shut this thing down because they want us to go to I guess the trade show's open, and they want people to go to the trade show. So you want to close it out with any words? We thank everybody for coming. If you're interested, check out totalacre.com. We'd love to see you at our next meetings. We got Griffin and McKenzie here. They can help you. We got a booth out here, 1443. David, anything you want to close it with?
Listen, y'all, we're going to be rushed. Let's be safe, and let's remember why we're doing what we're doing. Good Lord first, family second, and their pleasure of farming. Enjoyed this conversation and the questions. Look forward to seeing y'all at another time.
Thank you.